Hello, and welcome to another season of the Storied Arcs podcast. I am your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
And today, we are beginning a new series with Manifest Destiny from Image and Skybound. And we will be covering the creative team and kind of a spoiler-free pitch to the series if you want to read along and tune in each week. We will be tackling this one 2 trades at a time. It's a total of 8 trades, so that is 4 weeks for us. So we'll be back to discuss volumes 1 and 2 next week. So if you've already read those, you're welcome to skip ahead there. But if you want to learn more about the series with the creative team, this is the episode for that. And I believe, I don't like promising this before it's in the bag already, but Matthew Roberts has agreed to talk to us.
Yeah.
So we'll just iron out the details.
We're going to try, and we'll say at the top, you mentioned it is 8 trades. It's 48 issues, so it's a very, very simple 6 issues per arc. So there are 2 deluxe versions of Manifest Destiny, each with 24 issues each, which is 4 trades worth. So, just read 12 issues at a time, basically, for each of our week's discussions. If you happen to find them, single issue digitally or whatnot, or in trades, we'll be reading 12 issues at a time. So, and this series, I think, is one that I think is it lends itself to that. I kind of, when we get into the premise, which maybe we'll start with the premise, because the premise is pretty basic. It's pretty open in terms of what the story is about, which allows them to kind of go in a multitude of directions. Do you have the summary pulled up? I have it pulled up here. It's real short summary.
I have the issue 1 summary pulled up, which is sometimes different.
I think that's what they use for all of them. Does it begin in? Start with in 1804. Yeah, yep. Go ahead and read that. Yeah.
In 1804, Captain Meriwether Lewis and Second Lieutenant William Clark set out on an expedition to explore the uncharted American frontier. This is the story of what they discovered lurking in the wilds. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we have here in Manifest Destiny is an alternate history of the Lewis and Clark expedition, a story that I think most people learn at some point in American history, that I like. Every story in American history, at least when I learned it as a child, you got a version of it that as you grew up, you realized, oh, that was the really sanitized version. And that's not at all what actually happened in terms of what transpired. Not that anyone really knows exactly what transpired, but you can assume the version that ended up in your history books is not the way it actually transpired. And we laud Lewis and Clark. We know those names are synonymous in U.S. history with expedition and discovery. And as someone who graduated from the University of Virginia and has a level of reverence and respect for Thomas Jefferson as a figure and a person with all obvious reservations in place, Lewis and Clark are an important thing, because I think when it comes to Jefferson's presidency, his 2 terms in office, I think it's fair to say that the thing he is most known for, that his literal biggest mark on U.S. history was Louisiana Purchase and the exploration thereof, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what he did as president in the executive, and Jefferson, by the time he was out, hated the presidency to the point where he didn't want to list it on his tombstone. But while he was there, expanding to the West Coast, purchasing the territory, and commissioning Lewis and Clark out there to do this is a big part of history. And I think it's a story that people know generally, the main characters, right? Lewis and Clark, Sacagawea, these kind of big names, because that's what's told to us. And here what we get in Manifest Destiny is, I'm going to say alternate timeline history, but it's alternate in a way that, like, not like we're getting a different version of events, like it's sci-fi horror alternate history,
which you can tell if you study the cover, right?
Yeah, it's not
a spoiler. They're standing on is made of human remains.
It's not a spoiler to say that early on in the first book, the presentation is kind of like it's Clark's journal. Right, he's like he's keeping a private diary, and he makes reference to, like, there's the official journal and then there's the actual journal, and the actual journal is what we're seeing here, and they're fighting monsters, like actual beasts, like kaiju size kinds of things out there that are in the American West, and so that's what this book explores, and I think it'll be interesting to to go into the book with the idea of what we understand and know about the Lewis and Clark expedition. What was told from us from reliable history sources and things of that nature, which we'll have to brush up on. I'll brush up a little more, but understanding what the actual reported understanding of, and then see kind of where our creative team kind of throws twists in. Is this monster representative of something, or is this because they want to draw a giant mosquito? Is that sort of thing. And I think we'll get both of that, just kind of with the idea of the unexplored, uncharted land, this kind of unknown frontier, the idea that, here be monsters kind of thing. So I think it's a fun way to look at the story, kind of knowing what the history is and going into it and see how they play with it, see what turns they take. And again, is it representative of something? Is there a deeper meaning or a metaphor? Or is it because they just wanted to draw something cool and grotesque and weird? I imagine it's going to be a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Is this the only, this is a very leading question. Is this the only alternate history version of Lewis and Clark that you have encountered in fiction?
It's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. It's
you never saw Chris Farley's last movie that he died while they were making it.
Oh, that's right.
Him and Matt Perry racing against Lewis and Clark. Almost
Westward
Heroes.
Ho,
Almost
right?
Heroes.
Almost Heroes. Oh, yeah. That's right. Yes, that's right. Oh, wow. Great pull.
I was so sure you wouldn't have seen that one. And then I'm
I absolutely
we're the exact age. We're the only age. There's like a 5-year deviation on either side of us that have seen that movie, and no one will ever see it again.
No,
it's not a good movie.
It's not a good movie. That's a great pull. I would not have, maybe by the end of volume 4 or discussion 4, it would have oh yeah, by the way, that's a great pull.
But they're trash talking Lois and Clark, and Lewis and Clark have no idea that there is anyone out there racing against them.
Yeah. That is fantastic.
And that one kind of
movie
played with the tropes of Chris Farley was your man of the land expert, knew the natives and things like that and how to deal with them all, and was very bigoted and wrong about most things. And so in that way, it was a little ahead of its time, with the deconstruction of the classic Lewis and Clark,
absolutely
storytelling. It was just so hastily slapped together.
It's not great.
It seemed like they had a very loose script.
Well, and I think on that idea though, the idea of I don't want to say progressive, but the idea of having a better understanding of what this country's relationship is to the indigenous culture, which, spoiler alert, is all bad, literally all bad. And even when this book came out, we should go ahead and say the issue 1 of this book came out in November 2013. And it ran, again, 48 issues. That's a long run. It ran all the way to December 2022. And it had some gaps towards the end there. Part of that, I think, was COVID. And then I think the last couple arcs there, the last couple issues, maybe arcs for volume 7 and 8, I think had some pretty big gaps there between the issue releases, which, that happens as you get kind of towards the end there. But still, we're talking about a series that ran for a darn good long time there. And he said, even then, even in 2013, we already had an idea of hey, the stories we were told, that's not the idea of the noble savage, and that we went out there and brought all this great stuff, and we brought things to them, and we saved them, or whatever you want to say it, and everyone we sent out there was respectful. That's all a load of crap. We all know that it is.
And they shared Thanksgiving together. And
all of that stuff is complete total fiction. And so it'll be, again, interesting to take that into Manifest Destiny, into this idea of what are, for lack of a better term, what are the white people's relationship to the indigenous people out there they meet, and what does that relationship mean in terms of them potentially working together or at odds when there are literal monsters out there. It's not just a bunch of bison out there and grizzly bears and whatnot. They're meeting just the craziest sci-fi fantasy type creatures out there, like straight out of like Cthulhian horror and stuff. So, are there any larger, again, metaphors or messages, themes you're trying to put out there about our relationship to nature and to the indigenous culture, the people that are out there? I think that'll be something to keep in mind as we read through the book. Aside from just, getting some pretty cool visuals of some really cool monsters.
Yeah. All right. Creative team. Shall we start?
Let's go. Well, let's list them off real quick. I'll list them off real quick here. We got our writer Chris Dingess, and our artist Matthew Roberts, along with colorist Owen Gieni. I'm going with Owen Gieni as the colorist, and letterer Pat Brosseau. We'll start with Dingess, the writer here, because it's very simple. Manifest Destiny is his only comic work. His only published comic work. It is Manifest Destiny and a short Manifest Destiny story that appeared in the Skybound X kind of anthology that Image put out, that they would do every so often. So this is his only comics work, but he is mainly, and like his day job, his actual job is a writer and producer and director for television. He's done a handful of stuff the past 15, 20 some odd years. Thing he's probably best known for, his probably highest priority gig, highest profile gig, is he was the showrunner for Agent Carter, which was quasi decanonized, because if you remember back when the MCU started and when they branched out into television, Marvel Television was a different entity from Marvel Studios, which was the movies. And so Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, things like Runaways.
But it was just so confusing that they brought Clark Gregg in. And then they explained his death from the movie.
Yeah,
but then they never brought him back into the movies because the movies are like, we don't accept that rationale. It was fun sandbox over there.
It was very weird. Marvel Television initially was run by Jeff Loeb, and then at some point, Kevin Feige and Marvel they just kind of all agreed. You know what? It's all in studio now. So and I should say, like, the original Netflix shows, Daredevil, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, Defenders, that was all under Marvel Television, which is why I was over at Netflix. And then, once the studio consolidated and no, Marvel Studios is everything. Marvel Studios is film and television. It's just all under one roof. All the creative teams work out at this port. And all that original stuff was like quasi decanonized, and they just brought back the stuff that they thought made sense, like Daredevil and things like that, right? But Agent Carter was done under that kind of original umbrella, and I think wildly underrated. I think Agent Carter was a lot of fun. It was a period piece. Haley Atwell is so good in that role. She is so good as Peggy Carter. But that was Chris Dingus' kind of major thing. He also has a ton of credits of producing roles of various extents. Like, if you go on IMDb, you'll see things like executive producer, co-executive producer, supervising producer, consulting producer. I don't know what any of that stuff means, but some of the stuff he's worked on, I think he got to start working on Medium, the show with Rosanna Arquette, the show Men in Trees, a really funny show from back in the day called Reaper. It was really, really good. I think he was an exec on that. Eastwick, which is a reboot of the Witches of Eastwick movie. And then also after Agent Carter, he worked on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's worked on Doom Patrol. Most recently, he's been a producer in some sort on Gen V, one of the spinoff from The Boys. And I think what's really interesting, though, is that he was show running Agent Carter. That was like 2015, 2016 sometime. So he's show running that show, like not just producing he's the showrunner of that show on network television while he's also doing Manifest Destiny. Like, this book spans that time frame where he's doing this comic work. Yeah, so I think that's interesting that he's working in television. He has a pitch for a comic. It gets out there. It does really great, especially early on. I want to say all 6 of all 6 issues, the first 6 issues went to multiple printings, at least 2 printings. Issue 1, I think, went to 3 printings. So like, it's sold out initially. It came out and it hit pretty big. And again, even regardless of what the sales were, it got to 48 issues. Like, they're not letting a series run that long if people aren't interested in it, and especially a series like that that's been on a long time. A lot of series like that, when they hit 2020 and we had that long break, a lot of books just went away, Like that was an excuse to be like, okay, you know what? You've been here 5, 6, 7 years. This book's had a good run. But the industry is collapsing because of COVID and everything. So we're going to shut down. This book survived that. This book survived that and got to finish on. So I think it says something about the quality there and the interest in it. But I'd be interested. I'd be curious to see if Dingess has any other comic ideas. As someone who's worked in television, both in genre television, again, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter are Marvel, Doom Patrol is DC, Gen V, again, spinoff of The Boys. So he's worked in specifically the comic book genre space on television. I would wonder if he had any more ideas in comics. I think it'd be interesting to see, to come back to.
I'm certain he does, because, I mean, as the showrunner, you're sitting in the pitch room, right? You're cranking out the beats for a season at a time.
Yeah.
And, that people may forget that television in 2014 was very, very different than television now. 2014, you did the grind, 24 episodes in like 30 weeks. And you didn't have 3 years to make an 8-episode season.
Yeah.
So,
and all this stuff was all, at that point, all on broadcast.
You're not saving your great
S.H.I.E.L.D.
comic stories for later.
Agents
when you're in that
on
writer's
broadcast.
room. Exactly.
Agent Carter on broadcast, so, but yeah, I'd be interested. It is interesting to see someone, who comes in from another medium, who I'm assuming clearly was a comics fan, right? I mean, I don't know anything about his backstory, but like
there's basically no way you get showrunner at Marvel and an Image comic.
Yeah.
Without some comic background.
I would imagine. And again, he had such a long run. This book was successful for Image, for Skybound. I'd just be curious to know if he has anything else, or again, his main job is doing TV work. And if he wants to do that, that's great. But like after reading this and being like, wow, it's just I can't imagine he only got one shot. And that shot lasted nearly a decade, and you got 48 issues out of it, and no one's going to be like, you know what? Yeah, pass. I'd be curious to see if he has anything else, or if he even wants to. And maybe he's, down the line, he'll think about it and come back to it. But I would love to see it, because anytime you get that kind of, at least when I see it, when you get that kind of crossover from film and television into comics, it can be a little iffy. You don't know if someone can find their sea legs in that medium, and he clearly did, because he had a long run.
Well, I mean, there's two options here. Either he has connections and talent, or he's like Stan Lee's secret child, and like that's the only way you get a 48 issue run if you're not hacking it.
Yeah, well, or it's just good. That's the thing. If people like it, it sells. And that's so. You tell me you had a book that sold out in its first run for its first arc, and it ran for nearly a decade. But yeah, again, maybe he doesn't want that. Maybe that's not what he wants to do in his career. But I would love to see someone who's had success in comics, who came from quote unquote outside of comics. He wasn't raised in the industry. He was raised on television in the industry career wise. I'd love to see him come back and do something, because it is strange. Sorry, not strange. It's notable to me anytime I see something like that, right? Because there are plenty of people who are like, oh, this guy came from television. Oh, and he's got 6 series he's written on, but they're all like 4 or 5 minute, miniseries. Here's a short run of something, short run another. That stuff you see a lot of, but they have a long extended run, and for that to be your only credit, I
mean, it's not dissimilar to Joshua Hale Fialkov, who we did with The Bunker.
But he has
a little bit more.
Yeah, he has more. He has multiple series. He's done a lot of that, and so that's what I'm saying. A lot of times you see, even if it's like a failed series, quote unquote failed series, right? Like, oh, here's the first one, and the next one was a lot of hype on it, and it went 5 issues and got canceled. There isn't even that.
Right.
That's what's notable to me. It's just the one credit. So anytime there's just one credit on something, and it's a big long run, it's notable to me. It stands out. So yeah, I would love to see him come back after having kind of, again, I think Agent Carter was underrated as a show. I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm enjoying Manifest Destiny. So I would love to see him come back and be like, "Hey, I got another idea." Because if he does, after what I've seen of his one comic work, I'd be in for it. I'd check it out, no problem.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll talk more about his writing as we go through his writing.
We will. We'll do that. Yeah. So we'll move to Yeah,
Yeah, Matthew Roberts.
Matthew Roberts, our artist here. Someone who has essentially only worked on creator-owned books. The vast majority of his titles are over at Image. He's got some stuff at at some smaller press stuff, like even creator-owned stuff at like Keen Spot and some other smaller stuff. But the stuff he's known for is at Image. He's done some contributions to some other Skybound stuff. Like I think he's done some stuff. He's contributed to some issues of Invincible. Skybound is Robert Kirkman's imprint, and he is currently the head of Image. And Invincible is one of Kirkman's babies. It's one of his books. So Roberts has contributed to that. He's done some issues of Battle Pope, and also the horror anthology they do called Creep Show. So he's done some stuff around there, and really kind of outside of Manifest Destiny, which is like his longest run. I think that the thing most recently he has done is Universal Monsters, Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives! ! Image has been doing a really cool job with the traditional Universal Monsters line. Dracula, Frankenstein.
I was going to bring that up because
all those
Creature from the Black Lagoon, signed by Dan Waters.
Yeah,
very excited to take that same issue down to Lexington in a few weeks.
Yeah, then Black Lagoon, it was co-written by Dan Waters and Ram V. We've talked about Ram V, Dan Waters. Both those guys are great writers. Met Ram V once, very cool. Met Dan Waters, very cool. Before this issue came out. But again, this line of Universal Monsters has just been so cool, the way they've been reimagining and kind of reinterpreting them. As we're recording this right now, they just dropped issue 1 of Phantom of the Opera. From Tate Bromble and Martin Simmons. Martin Simmons, the artist on Department of Truth. Really cool stuff. So all of those lines, and I want to say they're all like 5-6 issue miniseries, like intentionally. They're just meant to be these short series of just introducing these classic monster characters in like a really kind of creepy and kind of dark way. And Creature in the Black Lagoon was again in that line is really great, really cool. So that's probably, I think, he's done most recently people know about. But the thing he has coming next, which as we're recording this now, this book comes out beginning in April 2026, so next month. It is called Corpse Night. It's I think it's also meant to be like a 5-6 issue miniseries, but that is with Mike with a much like working with Chris Dingess, it is with Michael Shavs, who is a filmmaker best known for his horror work in the Conjuring franchise. Do you know anything about the Conjuring franchise, like The Nun and all that stuff?
It sounds like the type of stuff where like I get queasy when the trailer comes on for the movie I'm watching, and I'm like, come on, man.
I think The Conjuring is one of the ones. I think this is one that originated or co-originated from James Wan, who is kind of a horror master. But Michael Shavs has done like 3 or 4 movies in that franchise continuing on, which to horror fans I think is really good. But he's making his comics debut with this book Corpse Night. So it's like we have a trend here with Matthew Roberts, right? Being an artist, working with people, working with creatives from outside the comics industry. Chris Dingess from television, Michael Shaw's from film, and working with these guys in kind of in their first initial comics work, and maybe their own comics work, their only comics work. I don't know, but that's a book coming out in April, which I'll check out. It sounds pretty cool. I like Roberts' art, and even though I'm not the biggest horror fan, this book, this Corpse Night, I think it has some horror elements to it. It's what Michael Shavs is known for. But yeah, it's coming out in April. We can look forward to that. I'm sure if we get a chance to talk to Matthew Roberts, I'm sure he'll tell us more about it when he gets a chance to. So, but yeah, outside of that, again, outside of his Image stuff, there's not a whole lot else there. I think kind of notable, in terms of what you would find Roberts on. But the stuff he has done that's been out there and it's been pretty known and pretty big. I think Corpse Night's going to be in that same kind of vein.
Yeah, he seems like a guy. I mean, like he seems like a guy who can do like the horror stuff and even some of like the body horror type stuff.
Yeah,
that would make me think it. Like it would not shock me if he was on a project with Tynion at some point in the future.
Yeah.
But Tynion's bench is like so deep at this point.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
and you'll see as we go through reading Manifest Destiny, the idea of horror and body horror, we're talking about giant monsters. And yeah, a lot of people casualty count pretty high here. You know, a lot of people die, a lot of big stuff going on. So that is definitely seems to be a club that's in his bag, whether it's straight horror or it's just more kind of like body horror or things like that. He draws the grotesque and kind of unsettling. He draws that pretty well. So yeah, to work in a horror or even like horror adjacent genre, I think really fits his style. So, but yeah, I'll be checking that out when we get there. The colorist, Owen Gieni,
Gieni, I think, yeah.
Yeah,
He's leaning
Gieni,
into the vowels. Yeah.
making it as Italian as possible. I don't think this doesn't seem like a situation where Roberts has like a regular colorist. You know, like I don't think Gieni is like his regular guy. But Gieni has done a lot of image work, both as a colorist for other artists, like a book called Debris, where he colored Riley Rossmo, and a book called Shutter, which Shutter has actually been on my list. We may actually down the road cover that at some point. It's been on my like to read list for a while, but there he was a colorist for artist Leila Del Duca. But he's also done work as an interior artist himself, where I think he pencils and colors himself, most notably on a book called Rat Queens, which is a pretty cool book. He was the main artist for Rat Queens Volume 2. That book had some different phases where they brought different artists in. He was the artist for Volume 2, which I think was like 14, 15 issues of that series. He's also done work as an artist over at Dark Horse on some stuff. This book called Negative Space, where he's a co-creator on. Did some Magic the Gathering kind of licensed properties. And he also worked with Cullen Bunn on Bunn's Harrow County series, which is the horror series. I believe Gieni did the art for some of the backup stories. He wasn't the main artist. The main artist on Harrow County, I believe, is Tyler Cook. That sounds right. I didn't write it down, but Gieni did the backups in some of those issues, working with Bunn as a writer. So he's done work as both a main interior artist and a colorist, but here he's working with color and gets to do a lot of stuff. Because this book being both an outdoors book, right? We're in the wilderness and we have fantastical supernatural elements. So there's a lot of dynamic color work that goes in on these pages that I'm sure we'll talk about as we get to it. And then finally we have the letterer, Pat Brosseau. This guy's done a ton of work, mainly DC book. I think if you look up his credits on like Comic Geeks or something like that, it's like 6,500 books over at DC or something like that. It's well over 6,000, I think, going back like 30 some odd years, like into the 90s. And he's the kind of guy that's worked on, you know, when you're a letterer in-house at like
that
DC.
Sentence. Going back 30 years into
I know,
the 90s.
I know that was tough. I know.
I didn't like that.
But yeah, so when, you know, especially back then, if you're in, I'm guessing he was just one of their in-house letterer guys. So he's working on every book that comes across there. And also back in the 90s, he did a lot of work at Marvel in the 90s only, and mainly on X-Men books. So it means I probably read a lot of his stuff without even knowing it. Stuff he did back in the 90s. Most recently, he's still working at DC and doing a lot of Vertigo stuff still then and now. But he has been doing some more kind of other studio stuff. Over at Dark Horse, he's done a lot of Hellboy, a lot of Buffyverse books, Alien and Predator, because Dark Horse has a lot of licensed stuff as well. Recently at Boom, a book you and I both really liked, Pine and Merrimack. Kyle Starks and Frank Galan.
And not his only Kyle Starks book either.
Yeah, he's done a lot there. Uncanny Valley over at Boom, Blink and You'll Miss It, The War, Beck Clunan and Garth Ennis. So he's done
Uncanny
a lot
Valley
of
is another one that may come up on the podcast at some
it
point.
Could.
I really liked that book.
And because of the nature of that book, you have a lot of different styles of lettering to bring across. Over at Image, I don't know how Image does their lettering. I don't think they have like in-house people, but the vast majority of books that Brosseau has worked on at Image have been Skybound books, whether they are, you mentioned Kyle Starks, the book like I Hate This Place. He's the current letterer on G.I. Joe Real American Hero, which is the continuation that Larry Hama has been writing from Marvel to IDW to now. He's not doing the Energon universe stuff, but like the main old school OG G.I. Joe title, he's lettering that. He does a lot of Josh Williamson's books over at Skybound. Williamson is one of kind of Kirkman's guys at Skybound, including Birthright and Dark Ride, two books that Williamson did with Andre Bresson, both very, very cool books, and a bunch of other Skybound specific Image books. So it's like he's kind of found a lane there over at Image, working under on Kirkman's imprint and kind of doing all the books there. If you're a letterer, you most letterers are pretty diversified in terms of working for a lot of companies, a lot of publishers, a lot of creators. You get hooked on with someone, and that becomes your letterer, right? Every book you do, or regardless of publisher, someone like Kyle Starks, wherever they're working, they're probably going to request a letter that they know. And Pat Brosseau is one of those guys who's been doing it for a very, very long time.
Yeah. And, good ways to express yourself in this one too.
And so, as I mentioned, part of the book is diary entries, right? Right. That serves as narration. As opposed to internal narration, you get this like handwritten script of Clark's diary. So you have that plus your dialogue, all sorts of stuff going on there. So yeah, there are different things that you can do here that he gets a chance to do to help represent the story on the page and interpret it for the reader.
And interestingly, I see he's did some like, there's a League of Comic Geeks skullduggery going on here. I was like, how did he only do 2 issues of the book Air from Vertigo? Yeah. But that's because he was the letterer for Sweet Tooth, and Sweet Tooth had previews in Air.
Yeah. You always got to check that with because that is an official credit. If it is
correct,
included.
It's not wrong. But yeah, I pulled him up on Comic Geeks, and I have 100 of his books in my long boxes somewhere, and did not know his name to my shame.
It's probably a lot of DC stuff, probably a lot of Flash stuff, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Oh, a lot of Flash stuff. Yeah.
So
I mean, he did some New 52 Bats. I mean, it's quite a list.
So he is someone that who was actively a letterer over at DC on every title, every character.
Action Comics, Aquaman, Batman.
Whether it was a fill-in for an issue,
Flash,
or he was the guy on the whole main run. That's kind of where
Green Arrow.
That's where his bread and butter has been. And on top of that, also doing some really cool stuff over at places like Boom and Image, Skybound and stuff like that. Some really cool books that you and
Vertigo.
I both like.
I mean,
Ghosts
at Vertigo.
He did a lot of Vertigo books back in the day, kind of that second wave of Vertigo, 90s into the early aughts. So yeah, he's someone that's done a lot.
And the Omega Men, Tom King. Early Tom King.
Barnaby Bagenda as artist there. Yeah. Widely underrated book. Although kind of one of the first books of Tom King's that was like, this book sells like 7 copies every week, every month. And
they're all comic shop owners.
Well, yeah. And then we're going to cancel it. And then the outrage was like, no, bring it back. And so they let him run all the way 12 issues. I think it was going to cancel after like 7 or something. And it got revived. But yeah, Brosseau is a guy he's someone when you have that long of a career, you're going to go through and be like, oh, I have a lot of books of his, and, oftentimes in stuff for the big 2, lettering isn't as important. They have house styles. The
goal is not really novelty when
you're less inclined to see. You're less inclined to see variations, swings taking on lettering. The stuff we like to highlight when we can. When a letterer is either tasked with or figures out a way to help enhance the storytelling by little things, whether it's changing the font, changing the shape and size of the balloons themselves, just like a background color. The most that happens typically in a mainline superhero comic is you get a slightly different color in the narration box with a little symbol next to it. So this is Batman speaking here. This is Wonder Woman speaking. This is Superman speaking. Like you don't get much change other than you see the logo next to it and oh, that's what character's talking right now. So when you get into some of the creator-owned books from the other publishers, you get to do, I don't want to say more fun stuff, but I think for a reader like myself, I find that more fun when you get a little more dynamic and can flex a little more and really add to the storytelling as opposed to just figuring out where to put the words on the page, which a lot of superhero comics is just looking at the art and finding a place to put the letters. When you can actually add to the storytelling experience, that stuff is when comics kind of go to the next level.
Yeah. Anything else to pitch this one? The other thing I'll say is that it's widely available. It's on. Yeah. I downloaded all 8 trades from Hoopla at once. Then immediately put my tablet in airplane mode for the next month. Just a little pro tip for you.
Yeah. Life hack there for having your that's I would say that's evil, but also it's like it's a digital copy.
They
it's
get
not like
their copy back when it expires, and I can't do anything on my tablet. I can't. My tablet is just a physical copy of Manifest Destiny that's over here.
That's true.
Until I finish reading it and turn the Wi-Fi back on. So.
And it's not like you can go download most stuff from them because you're on airplane mode. But it is a book that's out there. You can find it listed on Hoopla. You can buy it digitally. I'm sure these are trades you can find either at your shop or used bookstores, things like that. 48 issues, a lot of issues to go out and collect.
It is a lot. And the first few are worth quite a bit. Quite a bit relatively. It's like it's like a $10, $15 book.
Maybe so, yeah. Again, issues 1 through 6 all went to at least a second print. I think issue 1 went to 3 printings. So if you're someone who wants to go out and collect first printings, they're out there, but they're not going to be a lot, not going to be as many. But you can definitely find them if you go to dollar bins and used bookshops, things like that. You can probably piece together a collection. It just it takes a while to find because there are a number of issues, but it's available. It's out there in some format or whatsoever. And like I said, we'll be covering 2 trades at a time. So volumes 1 and 2 for next week, aka issues 1 through 12.
Great. We will see you then. And thank you for listening. Oh, the only other thing that I want to add in this episode, which I don't think people are going to be flustered by this series will have I'm trying to think, not interludes, but interstitials. We're going to the Lexington Comic Con, which is where we hope to interview Matthew Roberts. We're going to do a little preview episode of that the week before the con and a recap of it the week after the con. I think it's still unclear to me whether we will be doing those in addition to our regular episode or if that will replace it. So anyway, it's a lot of reading to do anyway. So worst case scenario, they'll come out a little slower, which gives you more time to read. But I
could also drop those in addition to these are things Mike and I need to probably figure out at some point. We should probably discuss this. But
just don't be alarmed if you promised Manifest Destiny 1 and 2 and then you show up for weeks 3 and 4 and it's something about a con in a part of the country you don't live in or a country you don't live in. Don't worry. We'll finish this series. We'll stick a landing.
We will.
All right. We will see you next week.
Peace.